Hey, this is Kalen with Commerce Hero. Welcome to the live stream. I am joined by my good friend David Stilson with Lippert Components.
How's it going?
David, how the heck are you?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good, man. Pretty good. I'm hyped up after Great Imagine last week. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
excited.
man. That was cool to get a chance to see you and chat a little bit at Imagine. Was that your first time?
That was my first time. Yeah, I've wanted to go for a couple years, so it was a good opportunity to finally be able to get out there.
Nice, man. By the way, a couple of shout outs to people that are in the live stream. Daniel Nettleton, what's going on, man? Yegnesh and Roger Kulin. That's a cool last name. It's like Kulin. I'm probably pronouncing that way wrong. But he's
Coolin'.
So, hey, everybody. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in there. If you see Commerce Steve in the chat room, that's my main man, Steve, best friend from my youth. And he's helping out a little bit here. So he'll be answering and moderating and stuff like that. So, yeah, so first time to Imagine. And so what was it like? You had the green badge, obviously the green badge of death, which can be
Right.
dangerous.
The say hi.
They say hi. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I had the little green say hi thing, but I also had the merchant badge, right? So naturally, everyone comes up to you. That's an agency or a vendor, and want to know all about everything you do and
Right.
what they can sell you. Right?
Very friendly, extremely friendly.
Oh yeah.
Why is everybody so friendly?
Yeah.
I had the green. Yeah, I was in house with a merchant a couple years ago, and I went to Imagine with the green badge, and it's an experience. It reminds me of my days when I was younger, and I was so good looking that in high school, all the girls just stopped me throughout.
Yeah. Yeah, we've all been there, Kaylin.
We've all been there. So anything in particular as far as talks, content, impressions, any particular inspiration?
Yeah, our group was really focused on B2B this year because Lippert is a OEM manufacturer for RV components. So we're very heavy in the B2B space and very light in the e-commerce side of things. So, our store mainly caters to, dealer and distributor customers that are buying replacement parts for an RV, and not really, direct sales to consumers so much. So we're looking to expand that, the idea of digital commerce. So there were a lot of great talks that revolved around, integrating your ERP, and making sure your PIM is set up correctly so that you're cleaning up your, ERP data.
Right.
So yeah, those are the big takeaways for us. Were just how to kind of approach digital commerce as opposed to just being like e-commerce and it being this thing off to the side.
Super interesting, man. So I mean, you're right in the sweet spot of really what Magento is targeting is that B2B that B2B life. So
that B2B life.
Yeah.
That should probably be a t-shirt, I feel like.
Oh my gosh.
For
yes.
next year.
Steve, tweet that out, man. Tweet that out and CC Mark Lewis, because we did this Mage Talk swag store, and when we get ideas for t-shirts, we tweet them out, and then we need a batch of 5 to send them off to the designer. That's
right.
A perfect one. Yeah, so you've got your PIM, your ERP, all that kind of stuff, and
yep.
How, I mean, we could do a whole topic on this. The topic, what we're trying to get into today is topic of how merchants think about hiring in-house talent.
Sure.
Versus working with agencies. And it's not a versus, it's probably both. It's both and what that looks like. So we want to get into that, but we could do a whole thing on B2B, and I'm kind of fascinated by that because of the big push around it. Are you guys looking at doing a B2B implementation of? So what version of Magento are you guys on right now?
So we're in the middle of a migration.
Don't say Community Edition 1.2. That's the only answer that you're not allowed to say.
No, we're Enterprise 1.14. Currently migrating to 2.2.
Nice.
So we should be launched in Magento 2 sometime in August.
Okay. And
Yeah.
how is the B2B implementation going for you guys?
So we have kind of an interesting scenario because we're a very Salesforce heavy user company. So we're tying a lot of Salesforce things into the mix. So things like single sign-on. A lot of our dealers use Salesforce communities. So we have this aspect of like, making sure that a Magento customer is also a Salesforce contact, and
Right.
are they a retail customer or are they a dealer customer, and how do we bridge the gaps, and how do we pull in data for dealer customers for their pricing and their taxability and those kind of things.
Right. Yeah, it seems like really I mean, I keep using this phrase. It seems like the B2B offering is less of like a solution or a product and almost more of a framework that like a lot of people I talk to that are doing implementations are, there's a lot of customization they need to do on top, but it's nice to be building on top of a solid foundation that the core team is building for B2B.
Yeah, just features like customers being able to manage their own sub-users and their own permission sets. Like I presented that a couple weeks ago to our team here, and they're like, "Wait, that's a thing? Like we don't we don't have to manage that for anybody. We can just put that onus on the customer to manage their own users." Yeah,
Right.
So a lot of that stuff we're not even doing now anyway, right? So it's like these are new features that are providing functionality we never thought about before. So
Yeah.
kind of changing the workflow even for how we onboard customers.
Right. It seems like that, I was talking to one person that changed their pricing model because of some of the constraints in Magento platform. And so it seems like there's a lot of you're changing your workflows, you're figuring out your kind of your HR. I mean, you're interacting with your sales reps and figuring out that's like not even a technology problem. And then there's lots of technology problems on top of it. So it's
a lot of touches throughout the organization, and a company like Lipper, it's a very segmented company as far as like what teams do that kind of stuff. So you're dealing with a lot of different people in very different physical locations, and just trying to get everybody to collaborate on an idea.
Right.
And they talk about, at Magento, the big thing this year was lead the charge. So our charge this year is digital commerce as a thing, and just making the whole company think about digital commerce in a different way.
That's cool. That's how it really feels like a lot of people have really grabbed on to the lead the charge tagline, like more so than previous years. It's just like, okay, the tagline. But it feels like people are really like owning that tagline. By the way, shout outs to Robert Duffner and Alan McGregor. Thanks for joining us, you guys. So actually, this is a great segue. You're talking about the different roles within the organization and people that are leading charges and stuff like that. So what's your role there? When did you join the team, and what does your role look like? And then we'll get into where do your agency partners fit in and where do resources fit in to the organization?
So I started at Lipper last May, so I'm coming up on 1 year. I was originally hired as a Magento web developer. But my role has sort of morphed into more of an e-commerce manager / developer role, because Lipper is a growth through acquisitions company. So what happens is, when I started, we had this parts store, that we sold replacement parts online, and it's evolved into this. Now we have the B2B side of things, and then as we buy companies, those companies often have an e-commerce site where they're selling stuff. So we've acquired companies that are in WooCommerce and Shopify and all these other dirty words, right?
Dirty.
So I see my job now is kind of establishing us on the Magento 2 platform as an organization, and then rolling in all these other e-com stores that are part of our company into this ecosystem, right? So the agency side of this is I'm one man, and it's not possible for me to do all of that development myself. And then you have to look at where we're located, physically. we're in South Bend, Indiana, which is not a very large town, not a very big tech hub.
Right.
So we're faced with, okay, do we try to hire remote workers, and how well will that work? Do we try to get developers to move here? From a budgeting and expense standpoint, does it make sense to bring on like 5 Magento developers, or does it make more sense to do large migration projects with an agency for the bulk of the development, and then just have internal resources that are there for the maintenance, the project requirements gathering, that kind of stuff.
Got it. Yeah, fill in some of the gaps.
Yeah, be the man on the inside, right?
Right, right. And it's interesting that you were hired as a developer, because I see that, I see that with Commerce Hero. I see there's a merchant, hey, we want to hire a developer. And sometimes it's explicit, and sometimes I'm kind of reading between the lines, and I'm going to myself, because you mentioned that you transitioned really from being a developer to being an e-commerce manager. What would you say the split is, if you were to give a percentage to it?
I would probably say 30% of my time is coding. Right. The rest is email, meetings,
all the good stuff,
requirements, right? Like
all the good things in life,
fun things. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's interesting, because people ask for a developer, but they don't maybe know exactly what they're asking for. And you have to really be more kind of a generalist and be I think interested in, what I hear sometimes from developers was like, you have to be more interested in the whole business. Like, I'm interested in these larger problems we have to solve as an organization,
right.
As opposed to just like, hey, let me like build out some new tech.
Right.
And so is that how you kind of feel, like a little bit more of a generalist?
Yeah, I would say so. It helps that being a developer in this role, I'm familiar with the platform and what it's capable of, and where we're going to have to spend money versus where we might be able to leverage, an out-of-the-box extension for functionality. What the capabilities are that a business user wouldn't know when they're trying to talk to these agencies. I think that's the agency we're using, Swarming Tech, they're probably very glad that they have someone like me here that kind of can talk the lingo and speak the language, and
right,
because then it makes the whole project easier.
Right. By the way, actually, Robert Duffner joined the live stream. He's
Hey.
Dude. So, any discounts you can give to that? No.
I did plug Swarming Tech, so I'm just saying,
just saying. Yeah, no, that's interesting. And then it's like there's they hired you, brought some in-house talent, and then did you sort of help with that decision on selecting an agency, or was that relationship in place when you joined?
No, that was part of, when I joined, they were in Magento 1. Magento at that time was kind of the redheaded stepchild of the IS department. Nobody loved it. Nobody cared about it.
Right.
Nobody wanted to deal with it. It was one of those deals where Lippert went to Imagine, 3 or 4 years ago, signed up with a vendor, spun up a store, and then it kind of just got like left out there and it did its thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so nobody has ever come along and be like, I love e-commerce and I love the Magento. Where was I going with that?
It happens. That happens when you're going live. Sometimes you lose the train of thought. But like, and so what do you? So were you part of the agency selection process with?
Yeah. So okay, yeah, sorry. Yeah. So my mandate was at that time, Magento was stopping support at November 2018 for enterprise and community edition 1.0 users.
Yes,
and it was like, we have to migrate or do something, and that was right around when I started. So since then, obviously that's changed. But my charge initially was, do we migrate to M2 or do we go to something else? So we were evaluating other platforms even along with agencies, and when we decided to kind of stay with M2, I was pretty much the one going through the agency list, doing the interviews, and doing that
Nice.
discovery process.
Nice. Yeah. And then, so, it's interesting because what I'm thinking through is like, what resources does a merchant need on their end, even to just be able to effectively work with an agency? Or, there's different types of agencies. Maybe some are more full service than others, or whatever. But like you said, like, and I've heard this over and over, like having somebody in house on the merchant side that you can talk to, can have a technical conversation with you. It just makes everything go so much smoother, from requirements gathering to build to test, everything. And so, I sometimes wonder, like, what does a merchant need in order to effectively work with an agency? Even.
Yeah. I guess it depends on the size of the agency they want to work with, because um, on my side of things, it's not just the technical stuff, but Lipper has a security compliance department, and like we have a PCI compliance strategy from corporate on down into every application. So like someone like me on the merchant side has to be kind of versed in what do we have to have in place for PCI compliance, and what kind of firewalls need to be in place. And so there's a little bit of the like talking the server lingo and the hosting lingo. So I'd say on the merchant side, probably somebody technical at least that can have those conversations about infrastructure and security. A basic knowledge of e-commerce. I don't even know if they would have to necessarily. I would say at least someone that has been around the Magento admin interface that knows how to
Right.
manage the catalog, manage customers, process orders, knows how the basic flow of the application works.
Yeah,
Right.
totally. Yeah, totally. It's yeah, I think that you have to have some level of technical expertise in house, and
Yeah.
it's all I'm thinking to myself, like, it's almost like I need like a set of test questions, when a merchant wants to hire,
Right.
so that I can determine like if they're at the stage where they're ready to bring someone on board. And then there's the other issue of like yourself, like being sort of like the only developer in house with a merchant, which was the role that I had, and I really enjoyed it. But that can be challenging too, because a lot of times, developers want to work with a team of developers, which is kind of what you get baked into like the agency life. And so, yeah, how do you see that? Like, what type of a person is that a fit for? And then, looking forward, like maybe at some point, you want to think about building up that in-house team to supplement even more. Like, how do you think through those decisions?
So our strategy right now is to grow a team slowly. The last thing that we want to do is hire 5 people, right? And then a year later, the bean counters and accounting come back and say, hey, the spend is too high in this applications
I hope
department.
the bean counters aren't watching the stream, because they might not be.
Or they might like it that I'm thinking about this way, right? They might like
go.
that I'm not going to go out and hire 5 people right now, right?
There you go.
So our strategy is to grow the team slowly internally. So right now it's just me, but right now we have a pretty solid internship program. We work with a lot of colleges in the area, so and who knows, I might get to kind of mentor an up and coming developer and get them into the Magento ecosystem, and then grow my team by one.
Right.
And then the next year I might get another one. And so the approach we've kind of taken with our vendor is, to speak to your point about collaboration with other developers, is we actually both commit code to the code base. So I'm actually doing code projects alongside of swarming. And the nice part about that is they check all my work and they run tests, right?
Right.
They kick my code back to me and say, hey, this didn't work, or here's what you could improve. So I do kind of get that. You can get that like collaboration with other developers, even in a vendor client relationship.
That's really cool. I hadn't thought about that. And we, when I was in house with a merchant, we did actually do did have some vendors that we worked with, but I'd never thought about it that way, of like, that's a way to almost sort of like get a baked-in team that maybe they can even do code review for you. I remember really missing getting code review and giving code review once I left Sweet Tooth, which was the last time I was really in a team of developers. And that's a cool way to think about that relationship.
Yeah, more of a collaboration than like the black box. Like I hired this company, they do their thing. I don't know what they're doing. Like we're even tied into the same Jiras with each other, which is it's a pretty rare thing for a merchant and a development vendor to share like a Jira and share a Bitbucket account, right? So
yeah. Well, it means you have a good relationship, which is
right.
the name of the game, and it's sometimes it's hard to find, find an agency that you have a good relationship with, and it takes a level of sophistication on your end to know who that right team is going to be and to work well together. So it sounds like you've done a great job of that. And it's really true what you say about hiring slowly too. I mean, sometimes I, work with agencies that I think also when you haven't hired developers before, like you want to take it nice and slowly, and that makes sense. Other people, they've already hired 5, 10 developers. They know what they're looking for, and they can get people on board quickly. But I think from that perspective of, developer comes in-house with a merchant, becomes an e-com manager, thinking about building up the team, makes so much sense to just do that really gradually. That's the great thing about working with an agency is you get this built-in team. They've got back-end, front-end, UX, all sorts of stuff. And you can kind of use, scale up and down the resources that you're using with them as you go. So,
and it jumpstarts our progress, right? Like what I can do with a 50-person agency is going to be way faster than me and, just me alone.
So what you're saying is you don't work as fast as 50 other developers combined?
I unfortunately cannot claim that.
Dang it, David.
I'm working on it.
I can't believe you're admitting that right here on the live stream.
Hey, we got to be real.
I got to keep it real. Hey, by the way, shout out Laura Falco who joined the stream. Laura, we got to figure out an excuse to get you on a live stream. So hit me up. We got to figure something out. Had a question from Roger Coolin. I'm not sure I understand the question. It's a little bit off topic. He said, does the company have its own inventory, and what application is being used for inventory management, order picking, etc.? I think he's asking about your company.
Right. So we have an ERP that handles all of that.
Yeah.
So, we take the orders in Magento, we get the inventory from the ERP, and we pass the orders into the ERP for fulfillment. So it's kind of a black box to me. So I basically just have to worry and make sure that the order gets pushed to the ERP.
Got it. What ERP are you guys on?
We're on AX, Dynamics AX.
Oh yeah, I think you responded about that. I remember. Nice. Yeah. So, Roger, let us know if we can add some more meat to that question. I know we were talking about some of the B2B specifics earlier on before we got into the hiring conversation, but so that's that makes sense. I think I see where your strategy around the in-house hire, and then like you said, do it and make it an internship, bring somebody on that needs to learn Magento, and again, you can just have that nice slow gradual process. Whereas if some people, they want to hire somebody senior that's ready to go day one, and that's just a different that's what they did with you. Like they brought somebody on who was more senior, and you've been able to kind of jumpstart things, become the e-com manager, figure things, set the direction, and now you're in place to be able to bring on more junior team members and raise them up.
Yeah.
Nice, man. Well, yeah, I'm not sure if I have any more questions specifically around the hiring. If there's any other anything else that you had top of mind around that, or anything else you want to talk about? I mean, shoot.
We haven't talked about small merchants. Obviously, not everybody that uses Magento is a large enterprise.
Right.
So when you're in that like medium tier, right, where like you're growing, you're primarily e-commerce, and you're getting into the $10-20 million a year store, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think as a smaller merchant, it probably makes more sense to go the agency route.
Totally.
Still.
Yeah. What do you think is the cutoff where, what are the signs if somebody's watching and they're a merchant and they're growing? What's the point where it's time to bring that first person in house? Is that an e-commerce manager? Is it a developer? Is it a mix? And it's hard to answer these questions in broad
It's hard
strokes.
because
There's so many
there's so many so many
scenarios.
variables. Yeah, like
Yeah, and
you're
with
are you spending $200,000 a year in agency spend to or not? Are you spending like $10,000 a year?
right, right.
Because when you talk about a Magento developer salary, right, that's 60 to 120,000 depending where you are in the U.S.
Yeah,
Or more.
yeah,
And if a developer is even available, like that's the problem Lipper had was there is nobody in South Bend, Indiana that does Magento development.
right,
Like,
right.
so, yeah, there's so many variables to that.
Yeah, I also feel like one of the patterns I see is that agencies are a little bit more open to hiring remotely, and even still, not all of them. When I got into this Commerce Hero racket, I thought that pretty much everybody would want to hire remotely, and there is a trend in that direction. But I feel like on the merchant side, I feel like it's less common, and it may be less of a function of whether they're a merchant or not, and more of a function of they're hiring their first technical in-house employee, and they just don't have the familiarity with that relationship to do it remotely.
Right.
But I feel like there's less interest in working remotely on the merchant side.
Yeah, I could see that for sure, especially a smaller merchant. We have
What
a
do you
lot
think?
of remote developers here at Lippert for other departments, so I don't think they'd be against that necessarily here, but
Yeah, but like you said a few times, like you want to build a team in South Bend, and I mean that makes sense. I mean, a lot of people, the majority of people are wanting to build a local team, whether a merchant or an agency. But I think about the remote thing a lot, and it's funny because when you work with an agency, you're working remotely pretty much all the time. You hope probably working with somebody that's relatively close geographically. But then the idea of working with an individual remotely can be challenging because it's a different.
Well, the last company I was with, they brought me in, for at first, right, for the first 3 months or so, and then we established that relationship, and then it became like a hybrid. Come up for a couple weekends. So I was working in Milwaukee at the time, but I lived in South Bend still. So we had that kind of hybrid thing going on where it was come up
Right.
for a week or 2 weeks a month just to have team building time and kind of have those person-to-person meetings that you need to have on various projects, and then go home and go into the code den and
Right.
bury yourself in projects.
Right.
And
Right.
just
Right.
come out and see the daylight every once in a while and say hi to people.
Come out of the cave. Yeah.
Right.
Since I've moved, we recently moved to Austin, got a new house, and have some extra space. We were in 1,000 square foot 2-bedroom apartment in LA, and so I have my own office and things like that. And man, I don't leave the cave hardly at all.
Yeah.
And I thought I was gonna go to a co-working space in downtown Austin, which is so nice. But I stay in the cave. It's it's hard. It's hard to get out of here.
Yeah, I've done the co-working thing. It's interesting. The hardest part I find about working remotely is you don't have coworkers to like go grab lunch with. It's weird, like little things like that where.
Yeah, no, but those are huge, and it's funny because to be totally honest, I place a lot of remote developers, and yet even myself personally, I feel like I have a need to have more in-person time with people,
Right.
since I've been working from home for so long, and so I'm looking for ways to do that, meet people out here and stuff like that. So it's really important. I mean, we've been mental health has been something that's been coming up more, and it's really, I think, really critical to find a way to get. But there's different ways you can do that if you're working remotely, and so being in house with a merchant, being the only developer, like, do you get do you get along really well with the team, or is it like
Yeah.
do they get you? Do they understand you?
Yeah, the nice thing about my situation is they've kind of grouped us into a customer experience technology department. So all of our Salesforce team, me and e-commerce, our configure price quote team. Who else? Who else? I'm missing somebody. Our project manager we have for our team. So they kind of put anything that's like customer experience technology related, they put us all together. So I'm still working with other developers. And
Mhm.
what's really nice is when you're building integrations to Salesforce and these other things, they're people that you work with every day, right? They're not some dude in another department in some other building that you have to
Right.
chase down. It's,
Yeah.
it's nice for that cross interaction.
Yeah. And what like what's it like for you having transitioned from being a developer, 100% to, e-commerce manager, 30% coding? What's that transition been like? What are the challenges, pros and the cons? What would you say to other people that are maybe considering that type of thing?
Um, well, the pros are you don't have to solve all the world's problems
Right.
by yourself, right? The con is you have to go find out what all the problems are in the
Right.
organization. You gotta have a lot more meetings, a lot more FaceTime with people. Um, it's a lot more requirements gathering and really getting down to the business use case for different scenarios and learning much more about the business, how it operates. All the details. Getting into that kind of stuff
Right.
as a e-commerce manager versus just straight up developer,
Right.
more of a business analyst type of role.
Right. Yeah, it's funny. It's funny because I don't know if it's uniquely like this with development, or if it's just I see it this way myself being a developer. But development is one of those things that everybody that moves out of it, even when it's a good thing, even when they're promoted to managerial roles or whatever, and making that cheddar, there's always this like longing of like, man, I wish I was coding more. I miss when I was
Yeah.
coding. And I don't know if that's just if that's happens across a range of industries, this sort of nostalgia for what you used to do. But
hmm
I don't know if you feel that way, but it seems like everybody that doesn't code as much as they used to kind of misses it in a way.
I feel like I code enough that it satisfies the itch, right?
There you go.
So I still get to write stuff and do things and write tests and prove things out. Um, but I mean I'm able to scale that now, right? That's the important part. You're trying to rapidly deploy an application, you have to scale your effort. And does it make more sense for me to sit at an IDE all day, trying to bang out code, or does it make more sense to roll out another e-commerce store and make even more money, or come at it from a strategy perspective,
Right.
right? Like
Right.
what's more productive?
Right. No, that's cool. And then to have sort of the freedom to figure out how much you want to code and how much you want to do other things,
hmm
so that you can scratch that itch as much as you need to, is kind of a cool position to be in. So we have a question. Also, shout out Dima Kamenko for joining in. And then we have a question from Robert Duffner, who I
Sure.
believe you're familiar with. So, David, do you feel the experience of being a solo in-house developer helps set you up for success walking into the ecom management role?
Um, I would say so. Again, just knowing the Magento platform intimately, like when you have to understand, I get hit with a lot of questions around like I'm going to use some dirty words here.
I'm going to
I
cover
get
my ears.
I get asked, why don't we just ditch Magento and go to Salesforce Commerce Cloud, or why don't we,
Let's talk about that. No, I'm interested in that. Let's talk about that.
yeah. So I get that pressure a lot because we're a very big Salesforce intensive user,
Yeah,
and so they're going to push it right to anybody and everybody
right,
from the sales side to our internal team. So
right.
yeah, so I get a lot of pressure on just like proving that Magento it can do the things that we want it to do, and that there isn't some better solution out there.
hmm It's interesting because sometimes I think overly simplistically about sort of the structure of merchant organizations. That like this is a merchant that's on Magento, so they're going to stay on Magento. But
Right.
like the reality is more there has to be like that internal advocate
Mhm.
that really thinks that's the right fit, because every company is always looking at other platforms. I mean, there's
Yep.
always a cost to switching platforms and platform risk, but I'm a Magento guy and things like that, but everybody is always looking at different options and trying
Yep.
to constantly evaluate that, you know?
Right.
So yeah, you having that role. So, but I'm actually interested about the Commerce Cloud thing. So like, what does that decision look like for you guys? What are some of the reasons you decided to stay on Magento?
Um, a lot of it was
You're like,
also.
Kalen, I'm sad to announce we're moving to Commerce Cloud tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, about that.
Robert's like, whoa, hey
Whoa, I
guys,
shouldn't have asked.
little heads up.
Robert's like, yeah. Never mind. I don't want to know. Um, uh, the decision really comes down to, total cost of ownership. Like you said, the cost to migrate to the new platform. I mean, the licensing for that for Demandware Commerce Cloud is outrageously expensive.
Mhm.
So it's one of those things where right now Magento checks all the boxes, has all the features we want, and it's cheap.
Right.
In 5 years, what if we're selling 100, $200 million a year? What? Like, is Magento still handle that volume, or do we start looking at segmenting retail into Demandware and B2B and something, right? Or what? Those are the questions that they always want to ask. Right now, it checks all the boxes at the cost of ownership that we want for the amount of revenue it generates.
Right. So
But
it's really pretty. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
but it's a lot of it's based around the revenue that the application generates.
Right.
At least
So
for us.
it's a pretty simple calculus. It's like Commerce Cloud costs a lot more, and that's that's pretty
Right.
much it.
To get the features we want that we're using in Magento right now, if we
Yeah.
switch to Commerce Cloud, what are the development costs to get all those custom features that, frankly, Commerce Cloud does not offer,
Hmm.
especially with the B2B stuff that Magento rolled out. And
Right.
the other thing is the open source aspect of it
Right.
and the market adoption. It's very easy for me to say, hey, Magento has, I think last I heard 30 or 40% market share. I don't know if that's still correct or not.
Yeah.
But it's widely used. There's a community of people that are a tweet or a Stack Exchange or Stack Overflow or whatever away from answering any questions you might have. There's loads of documentation. When we start looking at something like Demandware, it's okay. They don't have any information about the platform. You have to go to a 1-week course.
Got it.
Learn about just to like get access to the developer platform.
Right.
That kind of scares me a lot.
Right. Right.
Right. It's like,
Yeah.
what am I getting into?
Yeah. 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 When there's like no documentation around anything on a major platform, you start to sweat a little bit.
Right.
Interesting. So yeah, I mean, it sounds like a relatively simple conversation. It's like, hey, commerce. So like, why are people in your company interested in other than the fact that salespeople are pushing it on them? Like, why are they interested in it if it just costs way more? And
because they don't have those conversations. Salesforce doesn't. They don't tell you, like, right? They're, oh man, you should switch to Commerce Cloud. It's great. It does all. Salesforce promises a lot of things for their products. I'm not knocking Salesforce. They're a wonderful CRM, right?
you can knock Salesforce all you want on this particular show.
On this particular show, but we're heavily vested in Service Cloud, Sales Cloud, Marketing Cloud. We have we have IoT Cloud. Like we're heavily vested in Salesforce. So
Right.
for us, it becomes like, okay, we're using we have this huge Salesforce spend. Does it make sense to just roll everything Salesforce? So that's
Right.
from
That
a
makes sense.
strategy perspective. That's where they're coming at it with. Is like, we have this Magento thing over here, but everything else is Salesforce. And does it make sense to stay with the Salesforce tribe, roll everything into Salesforce? Or
Got it. And there's probably some nice integration features and things like that. Got a question from Brent Steen. Thanks for joining us, Brent. A small business on Magento for 8 years, but it's getting harder and harder to stay. Feeling that pressure to migrate to other platforms, parentheses, dirty word Shopify. And of course, Brett, if you could clarify, like, it would help to know like what stage you're at on Magento, like what revenue level, or some way to let us know what, if you're making, $100,000 of revenue, let's say, for example, that's a different conversation than if you're $1 million, 5, 10 million. But David, anyway, you can respond to that from your experience of having maybe evaluated Shopify a little bit.
Yeah, I would say those platforms work well until you get to a certain point. And usually that's when your catalog management grows beyond what you can do with those platforms. I'm not terribly familiar with Shopify, but I did come off of I was at a merchant that used Volusion. And one of the things that drew us to Magento, even just out of the box Magento, was the attribute system, the ability to just add and customize attributes for products that blew our mind. Because a lot of times with like the big commerce and the Volusion type stuff, you get the attributes they give you, and there's no extensibility or customizability, right? So, and it also, to speak to, this use case, do they have heavy customizations in Magento that they'd have to replicate that functionality in Shopify? So you're going to have some migration costs there, right? Yeah. Which if you go to M2, you're going to have those same costs. So that's kind of the position we were in too, right? Was, we're migrating to M2. We're really doing a re-implementation starting from the ground up.
What's another dirty word?
A re-implementation?
Yeah, we gotta call it a migration.
Yeah,
no, that's really what it is. That's really what it is.
Yeah, it depends how good your Magento 1 store was set up originally, right?
Right.
If somebody came in and slapped a bunch of modules from various marketplace sellers, and you have a bunch of compatibility problems, and it could be really challenging, quite a mess to try to move that over.
Yeah, totally.
So, I don't know if that helps him or not, but
yeah, no. And by the way, he also said loving your honesty. Hey, shout out to Winston Nolan, who just joined us, one of my favorite people on the planet out in South Africa. Works with a huge flash sale merchant. Actually, we got to do, Winston, remember, we got to, he's telling me I'm rocking a nice goatee. Thank you, brother. We have to do a live stream. We got to dig into AWS because Winston is a beast with AWS and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I think totally, like I think all of those things are sort of the standard, issues around Shopify. And it's funny, I had somebody that worked for a major toy company tell me that I happened to go to church with the guy who's like the e-commerce director for this massive toy company, and they're on WebSphere, and they were looking at Shopify Plus, and they ended up not going with it because of B2B, lack of B2B, but they were looking at it, somewhat seriously, and so. People say, "Oh, that's such a joke. Nobody would ever consider that." Right. And again, they didn't do it because of the lack of support, but they're looking at it, and I'm sure Shopify is going to continue to chip away at some of those features. Is it ever going to make sense for them to be really fully B2B? Probably not.
Yeah.
But
I think it comes down to what are you willing to budget for total cost of ownership, like. You're looking at a Shopify SaaS, right? You're looking at a low monthly cost, right?
Yeah.
You're not having to deal with hosting, and you're not having to deal with the code being compatible with the core, and keeping all of the security patches installed, right? So like there's these maintenance tasks that you're going to run into that might be a little overwhelming for a smaller merchant. And maybe, approach an agency from a management and a maintenance perspective, instead of like, some people think of agencies as like, oh, I have this huge project and I got to spend $50,000, $100,000, for my, maybe just think of an agency relationship in a maintenance perspective, passing them, instead of spending, $2-3 grand a month for a Shopify, get some good hosting for your Magento store, and then spend some money from an agency perspective. To maintain your Magento install.
Right. It's another way to slice and dice it. In terms of total cost of ownership, how do you how do you, I mean, obviously it's your licensing fees and your hosting and
Yep.
your agency and your resources, but
Mhm.
how do you think about that? What kind of conversations do you have around total cost of ownership with other people on your team? And what are some things maybe that some merchants maybe that are in your a little earlier stage than where you're at, maybe aren't factoring in platform decisions, maybe things people aren't thinking about?
Yeah, a lot of it revolves around customizations. Is the biggest. It's the biggest driver of cost. So, you know, our approach is to try to whatever platform or service we're on, what does it have out of the box that provides the most functionality that we need without having to do a ton of customization. And then if we do have to customize, weigh those costs from platform to platform. Yeah, I think that's where you can kind of get stuck, is if you get hell bent on like one path and you don't. That goes back to maybe Shopify does check those boxes, right?
Right.
Maybe Magento does everything you need and you don't have to customize anything. Maybe you can run a store in complete vanilla Magento. Just kind of depends
Right.
how custom you need it to be.
Right. Right. And that, I mean, that's where it's specifically with B2B, like, I don't think anybody's running that, out of the box at the moment.
No.
Not in the way that you could with B2C, with Magento, in previous years. And
Yeah.
then a question from Austin Kim. Thanks for joining us, buddy. What do you think about how this discussion benefits developers who've been with Magento for less than 1 to 2 years? So, developer that's been working with Magento less than 1 to 2 years. I'm not exactly sure, Austin, if you want to clarify that question a little bit, but how would they? What challenges are they going to have around maybe being in the role you're in? Platform decisions, working in-house with a merchant versus an agency. You can take this question whichever direction you want to take it.
I mean, really, it's you run into the same challenges, but maybe you're just not as familiar with the platform because you haven't used it as long.
Yeah.
So it requires more research on your side of things to really know what questions to ask.
Totally.
Magento is a very extensive platform to know all the ins and outs of it. Just straight vanilla Magento is surprisingly complex. So the disadvantage there would just be not having the years of experience just using it, right?
Right.
When I started in Magento, I was more on the sales side of things. So I was I was actually processing orders and like sending, right? Like I was actually using
Okay.
the, right? So I had that perspective of like the pain points around using like a Volusion to process orders.
Yeah.
And not being able to integrate the platform with anything else. That was a big reason that I've switched to Magento in the past. Was there's all these cool services that do things, and none of them talk to none of them talk to the ecom store that I was using. But everything seemed to talk to Magento, right?
Okay, gotcha.
So that's what originally drew me to it. So yeah, I think interoperability, the ability to integrate with other platforms and other services. Yeah, I'd say just take the time to really get to know the platform more. Maybe even just, as dumb as it sounds, sit with your customer service reps and process orders and get familiar with the platform more from a user perspective.
Yeah. You mentioned order management basically. Have you guys looked at the order management product at all?
We've in the very early stages, like I've asked for a demo.
Okay.
I'm interested in it, but yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I'm curious. I know a lot of people have been really excited about that, and I don't have that much experience with day-to-day order processing, so it's something I'm curious about. But and with the Magento 2 admin, I know you guys are getting ready to launch soon. Have you been starting to dig into it? What are your thoughts on just general usability of the Magento 2 admin versus Magento 1?
I like it a lot more. I think it's a lot more clear with the icons on the side, like what you're getting into when you click through things. We haven't really rolled anything out to our end users to get their feedback, but that'll be interesting to kind of get their, people that use it all the time, get their feedback on it. But I think it's a lot more intuitive, personally.
Nice. And how do you guys, in terms of like rolling things out to your team and training and things like that, how do you guys handle that? Do you have any really formal training processes? Do you do any of the Magento training? Like, what do you guys?
Yeah, we'll probably do a mixture of in-person, kind of internal seminar type, events where we kind of take people through the interface and how what the new workflow for processing orders will look like. And um, uh, for people that are already familiar with Magento 1, I don't think it's a hard transition because a lot of the things are called the same thing. Um, it's a very similar order state and status process that they're used to. So I think it'll be a pretty easy transition. It'll just be cleaner. Though I expect the thing I'll hear the most is, wow, this looks a lot more clean and modern.
Right. Right. Nice. Well, awesome, man. I don't know if there's anything else you want to touch on, but we're at about 50 minutes here. So
Sure. I think this has been pretty good.
Yeah, it's been fun. Unless anybody has any last questions they want to drop in, we'll probably call it a wrap. Anything you want to plug? Any particular? Hey, if anybody wants to buy RV parts, come on, somebody. You can head over to the website.
RV furniture, RV mattresses, replacement parts for any of your Lippert components supplied items.
I always in the back of my head, I want to get an RV and just travel around with the family. My wife homeschools, I work remotely, so we could pull it off, but we're barely surviving here in an actual house. But I do think about that from time to time. And there's a couple people in the Magento community that are like hardcore digital nomads. James Anale, who has done extension development and stuff like that, and he's just traveling all over Europe in a van, I think, and it's beautiful, man. I love it.
Yeah, it's an interesting company. We make trailers, axles, windows, doors, awnings, furniture, interior stuff.
Nice.
So much. Do a lot.
Do you find that again, as a developer coming in and becoming more involved with the business as a whole, do you find that like you become fascinated in RV parts and things like that? Like,
it's kind of interesting because I feel like I've like mentally had to abstract like the actual product knowledge away from my mind because there's so much, right? And there's people that are really good with the products. We actually have a content team that all they do is they're in our PIM every day, adding titles, descriptions, attributes. They're taking photos and uploading product data. So what's really nice about that is I haven't had to really get into like how every product functions. I get to say, well, we sell a widget.
Yeah. That's how you're doing your job well, is you don't have to get your hands dirty with all the specifics. The PIM is passing stuff through, and you're not having to troubleshoot that every other day. And what PIM are you guys on?
So we're currently on Salsify.
Okay, nice.
Yep.
Possibly the most interesting name of all the PIMs.
It gets a laugh.
It always gets a laugh, yeah.
They're like, wait, you're serious? That's what they actually
yeah. A question from Winston Nolan. What's your URL?
Store.lci1.com.
Store.lci1.com. He's going to go check he's like a performance nut, so he's probably going to go tell you all of the performance issues you have with your store. And then Brent Steen.
We're moving away from that store, so it was before my time. I just maintain it and keep the lights on, if you will.
Go easy on them, Winston. Go easy. Brent Steen asked, are these live streams archived? Yes, they are. They'll be archived on the YouTube channel, on the Commerce Hero YouTube channel, so you can check out. We did one on Monday with TJ. You can see that there. We did one on Tuesday with Rebecca Brockton. Wednesday, we did a Mage Talk live stream on the Mage Talk channel, so you can see that, and then this will be archived as well, unless David said anything particularly incriminating, and then we have to pull it down. Hopefully the bean counters don't put the kibosh on it.
You
Well,
told
David,
them what?
you said what? Well, David, thanks again for joining, man. I really appreciate it. Had a lot of
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. Thank you
And
for having me.
yeah, absolutely, man. So stay in touch. And thanks, everybody, for tuning in. It was fun to have you for the questions. We're probably going to be doing more of these. So we'll try to get on some kind of a daily schedule maybe. But pop in, you know the drill. Ask your questions. Do your thing. And we'll see you at the next one. Thanks.
All right.